I want to start as I was taught by an elder in Saskatchewan, to acknowledge the spirits of the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, and to welcome them.
It took nearly 3 years to get here and more than 2,000 testimonials leading to this strong condemnation.
The significant, persistent, and deliberate pattern of systemic racial and gendered human and Indigenous rights violations and abuses is the cause of the disappearances, murders, and violence, and this is genocide.
There were calls to all the people of Canada.
First, read our report. Speak out against racism, sexism, and misogyny.
More pointedly, there were those 231 calls for justice to governments and institutions delivered today by families of the murdered and missing.
All governments must further ensure that the rights of Indigenous children to retain and be educated in their Indigenous language are upheld,
to improve the representation of Indigenous peoples in media and pop culture,
to end racism and sexualized stereotypes of Indigenous women and girls.
We call upon all governments to ensure that protection orders are available to protect the safety of Indigenous women and girls.
Then came the ceremony's symbolic passing of the report, wrapped in a red blanket, the color that has been used to bring attention to the issue, officially handed to the Prime Minister.
I refuse to let our present and our future mirror our past. To the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls of Canada, to their families and to survivors, we have failed you, but we will fail you no longer.
You heard the Chief Commissioner use the word genocide to describe Canada's treatment of Indigenous peoples. Now, Salima Shivji takes a deeper look at what it really means and the debate over whether it's deserved.
A loaded word mentioned again and again. The report argues the deaths and disappearances of Indigenous women is genocide, a direct result of state policy, whether it be residential schools, forced sterilization, or the 60s coup of Indigenous children from their families.
To the people that don't think that there is a genocide today, we have 1,200 pages.
The Prime Minister accepted those pages with a promise to act, but without repeating that word, even when confronted with it.
This is an uncomfortable day for Canada, but it is an essential day.
I was hoping that he would have, that courage to put that new chapter that we are all requesting.
But in a clear indication of how contentious a word genocide is, even commissioners disagree.
We don't need to hear the word genocide come out of the Prime Minister's mouth, because the families have told us, the survivors have told us their truths.
I fear.
Romeo Dallaire saw a genocide unfold in Rwanda. The legal definition, he says, requires intent to destroy.
Is that an act of genocide? Is it? I got a problem. Is it deliberate? Do we want that to happen? Is that what our government wants to happen? Or is our government just that inept?
A divisive debate that could overshadow the report's recommendations.
Perhaps they had to use a term like genocide in order to sound the alarm, and people will take notice, and finally action will result. But I think we have to guard against using that term in too many ways, because then it'll cease to have the singular importance and horror that it warrants.
The current Attorney General made it clear this is not the day to argue semantics.
The important thing today is not about definitions, but about action, and that's where we're going.
So Salima's here with me now. As you showed us there, Salima, the Prime Minister, other ministers, a little reluctant to use that word today. Why was that?
Yeah, that's right, but not avoiding it per se. The Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, actually said the word genocide at an event tonight in a matter-of-fact way when talking about the report.
Earlier this morning, the National Inquiry formally presented their final report, in which they found that the tragic violence that Indigenous women and girls have experienced amounts to genocide.
Notice he did not say the government came to that conclusion. So the Liberals are walking a fine line as they try to fulfill one of their key promises, reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. And what the legal consequences would be of calling this officially genocide is an open question and remains an open question. But there could be certainly a diplomatic effect, of course, when that is used. A government source actually did say that they expect other countries to bring up the report calling this genocide and used on the international stage by countries that could not really appreciate being called out for their own human rights failures.
Sure. Okay. So the debate continues on that issue. Thanks, Salima. Salima Shivji here with me.